Hello and welcome to the program. The European Union and its 6 eastern neighbours, Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus and the Republic of Moldova, celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Eastern Partnership. What has been achieved during this time and what role did the Eastern Partnership play for the development of Ukraine? To discuss this, we welcome to our studio today Hennadiy Maksak, Chairman of the Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
So, it's been 10 years now. During these 10 years, which was the greatest contribution made by Ukraine to the Eastern Partnership?
Let me start vice versa, because
okay,
this policy of European Union, so it is more logical to say what European Union proposed to Ukraine during all these 10 years. Eastern Partnership is part of European neighbourhood policy, eastwards. So we have 6 partner states, and we have bilateral track where European Union cooperates bilaterally with each of these 6, and we have multilateral architecture where we have some forums for 3, for 6 countries and mutual forms of cooperation. By far, I think it is successful when we have both bilateral tracks and multilateral architecture, because we have 3 association agreements with Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova. We have 3 visa-free regimes with the same countries. We have a lot of mobility, youth mobility, cultural mobility. We have new transport initiatives. We have more access to broadband internet. So basically, a lot of simple, understandable results for people in these countries.
Now, I guess one of the difficulties in this Eastern Partnership is all these countries that we talked about, Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, are completely different. How does Europe, manage to get the same and to be fair with all these countries, whilst they have different histories, different markets also?
You're quite right. It is quite interesting architecture constellation of these 6 countries, while 2 of them are part of integration processes with Russia. But still, there is a mechanism of differentiation when, due to the ambitions, we have different tracks with different countries. When it comes to Ukraine, we have maybe the highest level political at the moment, it's association agreement. It was proposed back in 2009 when there was the launch of Eastern Partnership, and it proposes political association and economic integration. That means that we have integrated economy into European markets, which is 500 million people. And we have political association, which is next to everything but institutions. So I think it shows our ambitions as well as ambitions of Georgia and Moldova. When it comes to Azerbaijan, they have a partnership agreement which deals predominantly more with economy and energy, and political bloc is a problem to negotiate. They are still in process. The same goes to Belarus. They still do not have success on this new agreement. So you're right, different countries, but this differentiation is an answer, and there is principle more for more. When you deliver more, you can expect and get more from European Union.
Now, there have been talks since maybe 1 year or 2 from the European Union to expand to the Western Balkans, to some countries in the Western Balkans. Is the Eastern Partnership a potential guarantee for countries in this partnership to be at one point, a full membership in the EU?
It's a sensitive issue still. European neighbourhood policy means neighbours. That means that you have good relations with neighbours, but it doesn't mean that you have to invite them to your own flat to live with. But from the other hand, Balkans could be living manifestation that everything is possible. Maybe not in 5 years, but maybe it would be horizon on 10 years. But it's possible it would be a new policy which goes beyond these Eastern Partnership priorities at the moment. But still, I think it's up to us. Because at the moment, we have association agreements, we have implementation process, and I could say quite modestly that we have some obstacles on the way when it comes to cooperation of parliaments and governments, to adopting the necessary laws and so on and so forth. So the more we're successful in this process, the more, I would say differently, less obstacles we would have in political communication with our Western partners.
So the idea would be basically for Ukraine to develop itself on a certain domestic level, and that would show the guarantees for Europe.
I think this is the major call from European partners, from European Union itself to Ukraine, to have more ambitious agenda in anti-corruption, in judicial reform, in public administration reform, all that concerns good governance.
Now, I want to just for 1 minute come back to the example of the Balkans for a minute, because those talks with integrating the Western Balkans came with the idea from Europe, I mean, to settle some conflicts. I'm thinking Kosovo, Serbia, I'm thinking all these conflicts, which are actually resurrecting because of certain internal policies and, of course, like problem ethnicities conflict. Do you think that that kind of agreement, that kind of integration and European integration can lead to some sort of peace when it comes to the matter of conflicts?
Now we're talking about Balkans.
About Balkans, and can it be developed also, well, at one point in Ukraine?
To some extent, European perspective or Euro-Atlantic perspective could solve some issues. We know it about Macedonia and about Greece. So basically, I think it could be an example or a case, successful case for other territories. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't see possibility to resolve this Russian-Ukrainian conflict only with this European integration initiative or desire from our side and perspective from European side. I would say there should be more strict cooperation and involvement of European Union in this process, in peacekeeping operation, in pressuring, in sanctions regime. So all these part of foreign external policy of European Union are vital, except for membership perspective.
When it comes to economy, let's talk a little bit about economy here. When it comes to economy, recently Europe became one of the first export markets for exports for Ukraine. It hasn't arrived since a long time, because before that it was Russia. Do you see it evolving that way, and how do you see it evolve? And do you think that, in any case scenario, if Ukraine opens a little bit more to Europe, is Ukraine economy open and ready, for a full open market with Europe? There
is a special term when it comes to our implementation, all the necessary requirements, and this is sometimes 7 years, sometimes more, sometimes less. So basically, I would say that there is a kind to be prepared for that. To some extent, we have to bear in mind our national interest when it comes to some sensitive issues or areas. But I think that in many other areas, when it comes to regulations, our adoption of law when it comes to sanitary or other directions in terms of DCFTA, we could move more smoothly. But still, I think there should be more coordination place between government, between parliament, and there should be political will on both sides.
And now concerning the neighbors of Ukraine, I'm thinking here Poland and Hungary, which holds special places in Europe right now, because they're regularly under the critics of Europe. How do you hold and keep diplomatic ties with your neighbors while they're being criticized by Europe? And is it in the interest of these neighbors to have Ukraine more integrated in Europe?
I would say, and you perfectly know, that Poland is one of the founding parents, I would say, not fathers, but parents of this initiative, of STEM partnership. And on this stage, I don't see any preconditions that Poland could be perceived as somebody or some country which opposes our European track. They have some sensitive issues when it comes to history policy, and we admit that, but we are trying not to make different tracks when it comes to strategic security and our European aspirations. They are vocal advocates of this track. When it comes to Hungary, situation is different, but still they're trying to block our political dialogue when it comes to NATO and sometimes to European Union. They're not that active in promoting Ukraine. But at the end of the day, they're not trying to stop our technical cooperation. On example, for example, they could try to hamper our high-level bilateral commission, different kind of fora, but at the same time they are open, they do not object to our technical cooperation when it comes to standards, when it comes to economic cooperation, and so on and so forth.
So they won't block the whole way,
yes,
basically.
I think with overcoming our mutual misunderstanding on sensitive issues, we could come to a conclusion. But at the end of the day, they are not trying to block it exclusively. They see Ukraine as a European state with secure borders, but still, yeah, they have some diplomatic ties to
say the least.
Yeah.
And now, and to conclude this this interview, from the 23rd of May to this 26th, the European elections will take place. This is a turning point for Europe, and some of the polls are showing a rise of certain parties. I'm thinking extreme party, extreme far-right party, like Madame Le Pen's party, and so on and so on, which are funded or linked to Vladimir Putin. How can Ukraine weigh into this election? What would be the outcome of such elections in any case scenario for Ukraine?
Well, it's a very tough question, I would say. Even not all European pundits could just give you correct answer on this issue. But I would say that the best way for Ukraine not to try to somehow to exert influence or maybe just to place some kind of pressure or discuss more heavily with somebody from political families in that regard, but rather to be more active on implementation of our domestic agenda. When it comes to reforms, when it comes to fighting corruption, when it comes to our human rights as well. So basically more prominent on this track. I think less arguments we can give even to far right or far left political parties, which eventually might be part of the European structures and European Parliament as well.
So mainly focus on the country, mainly more.
Absolutely. We have what to do in Ukraine. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for this overview. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today. That was Hennadiy Maksak. He's the chairman of the Foreign Policy Council's Ukrainian Prism. Thank you for watching. Head to head and stay tuned for more.